Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it. And without further ado, let's go. During my senior year of high school, my younger brother committed suicide. This, along with other events, caused me to spiral into drug use for 5 years. However, it has been almost 4 years since I last used hard drugs. Most of my 20s were dark and lonely. My family distanced themselves from me because it hurt them to see what I had become. Thankfully, we have healed, and I am on good terms with them again. After I got clean, about a year in, I decided to try online dating. I quickly faced a harsh reality. Women didn't find me attractive. I was still a bit overweight. I had one date, and the woman never spoke to me again. Embarrassed, I looked up advice online and learned that even highly accomplished men with model looks struggle to get attention online. My confidence couldn't handle repeated blows to my ego, so I deleted my dating profile. I focused on my sobriety and losing a few pounds. With some luck, I got a physically demanding, better-paying job to counteract my concerns about being sedentary. I also started walking around the local park in my neighborhood. Unexpectedly, I began dating a coworker at my new job. Then, a friend of my girlfriend alerted us to a post she came across. It had screenshots of my old dating profile, including my pictures, bio, and private information. My first, middle, and last name, full birth date, cell phone number, home address, and the address and phone number of my previous job. The caption claimed I unmatched her before she could message me, and further stated that a friend told her I was married, and that my wife had to leave the state to be safe from me. The post was from almost 2 years ago. To be clear, I have never been married. It was embarrassing because I have never been close to being husband material, and I am still working on myself to be a great long-term partner to my girlfriend. For this woman to claim I was at that stage of life and then destroyed it violently felt violating. My girlfriend's friend shared screenshots of the comments under the post, which was devastating. Not one person asked for proof or considered the harm of posting my personal information online. Not one person called out the obvious retaliation over a perceived rejection. I don't even remember her face. I am confident she never matched with me online, as I got very few matches back then. However, the comment section agreed on one thing: men who look like me are secretly gay, and that's why they beat women. I cried for days, unable to fathom that women my age and older behaved like middle school children who taunted my younger brother to the point of suicide. There's not a day that goes by without thinking about him, but never because I was on the receiving end of the same kind of bullying. It made me determined not to let them keep getting away with it. My girlfriend and I decided to take action. She had been using a fake Facebook account to follow this woman, who posted everything online, including a list of several other people she had doxed. This urgency drove us to act because she had done this to at least 5 other people, including one woman. We assumed she used crowdsourcing from other members, but also used websites to gather private information. I have an arrest on my record for trespassing and drug paraphernalia. If she wanted to share accurate information, she could have mentioned my factual arrest record. It was clear this woman was acting like a predatory lizard parading around as a feminist vigilante. By sheer luck, I had moved jobs around the time of her post, and my girlfriend and I are not on social media. Otherwise, she would have harassed us directly. So we used her Facebook activity against her. She posted where she works, a daycare run by a church, and often posted when she was at home or work. We went to the daycare when she was at home, printed out screenshots of all the men and women she doxed, and included the posts where she encouraged others to review bomb their workplaces. We spoke with the daycare director, who was surprisingly receptive. They discovered she spent much of her work time on Facebook, including doxing people. 2 weeks ago, the director emailed me, explaining that they fired her for workplace harassment. We still use our fake Facebook account to monitor her. She has now created a GoFundMe to help pay her rent, but we will see that it is shut down for harassment and fraud. She has done this to so many people that I doubt she will ever figure out which one of us finally took action against her. Edit. Thanks for the awards and support. I had an account on Reddit years ago, mainly for discussing favorite TV shows and movies, and I never received more than a dozen replies on a post until now. This support has made my girlfriend and me really happy. There are so many great people in the world. Thank you to all the women leading the fight to expose "Are we dating the same guy?" from the inside. They started with a good idea, but now that it has turned cult-like and violent, it should meet the same fate as the involuntary celibate group. Update. Since the woman who doxed me also doxed several others, my girlfriend and I were able to reach each of them using the phone numbers she posted. We are all now separately reporting her GoFundMe. Hello, this happened 2 months ago, but I only thought of posting it now. Warning. It's a little long because I talk too much. First, a little context and backstory. I am a 19-year-old man, a severely closeted transgender man, female to male. I recently moved to the United States from Africa, I will not specify where for safety reasons, to study abroad. In reality, I moved in hopes of escaping the anti-LGBTQ+ laws and the sad reality of being queer in Africa. I hoped in America I could find a future where I could truly live as myself. Spoiler alert, I didn't. Not only does it seem like America dislikes transgender people as much as Africa, but also my family here seems to be 10 times more strict, closed-minded and traditional than my family back home. For those who don't know, being an international student is very expensive. My family is not poor, but we are not wealthy either. So to be able to live here, I needed to move in with my family in America, at least for the time being. Now to the actual story. A year ago, my cousin graduated from community college and was going to transfer to another university to complete their degree. We are all taking this route because it's cheaper. Naturally, we all had to attend said graduation. People from immigrant families can probably relate, but my family insisted on being well-dressed, overdressed for the occasion. I hate dresses with all my heart. I have hated them for as long as I can remember, even long before I realized I was transgender. I hate how I look. I hate how they make me feel, and it feels like I'm on the verge of a panic attack every time I'm forced to wear one, especially in public. You can probably tell where this is going. I was forced to wear one for the graduation. You cannot fight or talk back to your elders in my culture, no matter how old you are. I tried to protest as much as possible, but the decision was final. I genuinely wanted to harm myself that day. Anyway, this year was my graduation, and I knew since last year that the same thing would happen. My family would ask me what I have to wear for my graduation, and even if I had a perfectly nice suit that was appropriate for the occasion, they'd force me to go dress shopping and wear one to it. But this year, I came prepared. I didn't mention it earlier, but for over a year and a half now I've been on a weight loss and bodybuilding journey. In fact, the whole incident last year made me double down and work out even harder. Losing weight and building muscle has been a way to help me manage my body dysphoria. Not only do I now look more masculine, but I look pretty cool with muscles too. As mentioned earlier, my family is very traditional, so they live by certain gender expectations. One thing they absolutely dislike is masculine girls and feminine boys. They dislike muscular girls with a burning passion, saying it looks ugly or unnatural. So this year, when they brought up dress shopping for my graduation, I didn't even put up a fight. I went along like nothing was wrong. While dress shopping, I purposely picked the most tight-fitting, sleeveless, and unattractive dresses. I've been able to hide my body progress this whole time by only wearing loose and baggy clothes around the house. So, when it came time to try on the dresses, and I came out of the dressing room, the pure look of disgust on their faces is one I cannot describe. I had to try so hard not to burst out laughing in the moment. While I am not the most muscular person out there, I still looked pretty buff in those dresses. Simply put, I looked like a man in those dresses, and they hated that. The worst part is that they could not even complain about my body because my weight has always been an issue and talking point in my family. So, even though they hated how I looked, at least I lost weight. So they cannot complain. I was even considering spreading my latissimus dorsi as I came out of the dressing room, but that might have pushed it too far. Anyway, long story short, they hated every single dress and allowed me to wear my suit, which I looked much better in. And now, even though I won, I constantly get comments about working out too much from them. On the bright side, since I graduated, I am finally moving out after summer, hopefully with more freedom and less fear. Things will be different this time. Hey everybody, I joined this subreddit just for this story since I figured it wouldn't belong anywhere else. It's such an insane story that I wouldn't blame you guys if you didn't believe it. But unfortunately, it's very true. I, 19F, work at a library in the children's department, along with older coworkers in their 30s to 50s, as well as other teens. I've been working there since high school, which is how I know Melanie, 18F. To put it bluntly, Melanie and I are not friends. We used to be friendly back in high school, as we had a couple of the same friends, and we've both been working at our job for years. However, I would definitely not call us friends currently due to Melanie's attitude. She's the type of person who will ask for a favor, and if you refuse, she'll act very rudely to you. Once in high school, she asked me for a ride home, but I said no, as I had a track meet that day, and obviously couldn't take her. She huffed and stormed off, glaring at me for a week before she came back like nothing had happened and asked me for a ride home again. It's clear too that she doesn't really see us as friends because when we work together, she'll ignore me completely or just glare at me, only talking to me if it's something involving our job or if she needs something. If she needs something from me, then suddenly we're best friends and she'll chat with me like nothing happened. So yeah, I don't really like her. To the main story, I came to work yesterday afternoon around 2:30 and Melanie was there. Our shifts alternate slightly, so there's an hour where the two of us are both working before she leaves and I continue my shift. I hadn't seen her since we graduated, so we spent a few minutes catching up. She then asked me if I could take her home after her shift ended. I was obviously confused, as I still had hours to go before I was done with mine, and I told her so. She then implied that I could use my break time to drive her, and I honestly laughed out loud because I thought she was joking. Our breaks are 15 minutes long. It would take 30 minutes to drive to her home and back without traffic. Realistically, it would end up taking 45 to 60 minutes because of how traffic-heavy our area is. Who wants to spend their time off driving someone home? Melanie was shockingly not joking though, claiming that it would be doable, and that she really needed the ride because she had to be home and her mom couldn't take her. I said no, sorry, but no way that's happening. Melanie stormed off and ignored me for the rest of her shift before she, I assumed at the time, left. I didn't think much more of the situation, a little amused at her audacity, but whatever. Eventually, my time to leave came. So I waved goodbye to my coworkers and headed outside. That's when I saw Melanie sitting outside on one of the benches. She immediately perked up after seeing me, running over while I just looked at her. "You're leaving, right? Can you give me a ride?" I was shocked. I flat out asked her if she had been waiting for practically 4 hours for me to leave. Even after I said no, she said that no, she walked to our nearby town to do other things before she came back here. But in my opinion, that still counts as her waiting for me to drive her. I was creeped out, and honestly very annoyed since it felt like she was trapping me and playing the "you're leaving so you can take me too" card. It took everything in me not to yell or even run to my car. I calmly told her that I had plans after work. No, I could not take her. And honestly, it was insane that she would just wait around and assume I'd take her instead of getting the message and calling someone else. She just stared at me. I think she was shocked I actually stood up to her. With that, I walked to my car and drove off. I really hope she never tries to do that to me or to any of our other coworkers. Hey there, everyone. I don't know if this is where this goes, but I figured it was a good story to share. This story takes place about 6 years ago while I was working at a grocery store in my small town. At this grocery store, We have a side exit entrance and a restricted back area meant only for employees. We are supposed to call the police for trespassing if we see someone back there, but I never did because I thought it was wrong to mess up someone's day for no reason. Right by the back exit was the road to my house, and my dad had driven my mom to work that day. He was on his way back home with my mother in the passenger seat. Now, my dad isn't a big guy, but he is a scary guy. He may be only 5 feet 10, but he's built like a cage fighter and works out daily. The only reason I can think of for my father wanting to stay in shape is because he works in construction. I really don't know why he works out so hard. Anyway, while my father was driving down the road, he saw this 12-year-old round little rascal slap a 10-year-old girl across the face at the back of the store. My dad slammed on the brakes, immediately got out of the car, and yelled at the kid, telling him it's not right to put his hands on a girl and that he should leave now. This should have been the end of the story, right? Lesson learned. Everything's set right in a way. But we all know it isn't over. This kid clearly wasn't used to getting yelled at or told he wasn't allowed to do something. At this point, I was there and heard everything. My boss and I were outside taking care of trash and whatnot when we heard a blubbering prepubescent screech, "Screw you, stay away from me, jerk, I hate you." My boss came over to the screeching and saw the brat marching through the side exit. My boss approached him and said, "Hey, you can't be screaming here. That isn't allowed." As the obnoxious kid marched past us, he pointed back, screeching again. "It's because he's a jerk." That's when we saw a man walking down the alley, and my boss leaned over to me asking, "Isn't that your dad?" All I could muster in response was, "God, I hope not." This was followed seconds later by my dad calling out, "Hey buddy," to me. My dad brought us up to speed, and we all figured that was the end. But no, my boss and I went back into the store, and we heard what sounded like whale mating sounds. We saw, at the service center, the brat lying on his back on the floor, throwing a temper tantrum. My boss immediately brought everyone up to speed on what happened, and all sympathy for the kid dried up immediately. My boss informed the kid that he was not allowed in the back of the store anymore, and that if his parents didn't come to get him, the police would be called. So the brat pulled out his cell phone and called his mom. I went back to doing my job, thinking it was over. The entitled mother showed up and was the picture-perfect example of a Karen, with her haircut and attitude honed to perfection. She immediately got out of the car, walked over to her child, and said, "Oh, sweetheart, who made you cry?" My dad, apparently too entertained to leave, piped up before the kid, "Yeah, I did that." He brought the entitled mother up to speed on what happened and how her son hit a little girl. She scoffed and said, "That gives you no right to try and parent my child, even if he was misbehaving. That's a job for the parent, not for you." My dad, already fully grasping the type of person he was dealing with, responded, "Yeah, well, you weren't around, and I wasn't about to let a little kid hit another for no reason." She got offended by this and screamed in response, "I'm sorry, I was busy being a good mom at home and making my kid dinner. You have no right to parent my kid." My dad, acting like he just understood, went, "Oh, I get it. He's just copying what he sees at home. Clearly, your husband must smack the snot out of you if you think it's okay for him to be beating up on little girls." Karen did not like that response and said, "I'm going to go get my husband. He's 6 feet 4 inches and is going to kick your butt." My dad actually laughed at this and said, "Go ahead and bring him. I will snap him off at the kneecaps and beat him with his legs." At that point, Karen realized she had lost, loaded her child and his bike into her minivan, and drove off. She ended up coming back with her husband later, and my dad actively ate candy and laughed in his face about the brat his genes created. The man never touched my dad, possibly due to the police station that the grocery store's parking lot was adjacent to. Karen, her husband, and her kid were all banned from the store, and my manager bought my dad a box of candy. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. I have an emotional support cat named Alice. She is the cutest, fluffiest senior kitty ever, and has the softest meow that you can barely hear unless she really wants or needs you. I have her for my anxiety, which can get so severe that I become completely unresponsive. During these anxiety attacks, I don't talk, move, or respond in any way. I just sit, staring off into space, crying and shaking. Alice always helps me through these episodes and knows the signs of an impending anxiety attack. She rubs up against my hand or face to distract me. I usually experience the worst anxiety attacks in crowded, hot, and loud spaces or on long car rides and planes. Occasionally, I need her just out in public. I was going on a trip to Florida with my dad, but we couldn't get seats next to each other on the airplane for some reason. The woman I ended up sitting next to was middle-aged and constantly bombarded me with questions about my cat. They weren't the usual questions like, "How old is she?" or "What's her name?" but rather intrusive ones like, "Why do you have that?" After I explained that I needed Alice, she asked even more questions and made unnecessary comments like, "You don't look like you need her," and "You just wanted your pet on the flight, didn't you?" The flight I was on allowed pets, as long as they were in their carriers, but Alice was outside and on my lap to comfort me, as it had been an especially hard morning. The woman also said that I was obviously a troublemaker, and wasn't new to breaking the rules, probably because I have piercings, dyed hair, and a couple of tattoos. At one point, she even told me that I didn't really need Alice, and that I should put her away before she took her from me. She faked sneezing and coughing to get the flight attendants to make me put Alice away, but they didn't because she was wearing her emotional support animal vest, which indicated that I needed her. The flight attendants had already asked if anyone around had allergies to cats, and she was not one of the people who did. They offered to move her to a different seat if she was allergic or uncomfortable, but she declined, even though it would have been much easier for everyone involved. At one point, Alice sensed that something was wrong with me, as I was visibly uncomfortable and holding on to her tightly because of the threat the woman had made. Alice meowed softly, not directly at the woman. Despite this, the woman screamed, saying that my cat hissed at her, and that she was scared because I was holding a vicious animal that needed to be put down because she bit her. Alice has never bitten, hissed, or scratched me or anyone on purpose ever. She doesn't even play fight. The staff told the woman that obviously nothing was wrong with Alice, and asked me if everything was all right. I told them no. After about 45 minutes of the woman's rude behavior, she was moved to a different seat. The staff on the flight apologized to me, and Alice got a seat of her own and extra treats. I don't know what that woman had against my cat, but I think it's safe to say she's probably a dog person. This has been going on for all 18 years that I've been alive, but was happening before I even existed as well. Some of the stuff in here definitely feels like things Reddit would absolutely love, so I thought I'd finally share it somewhere. Here's a list of some of the things my entitled grandmother, my father's mother, has done since I was born. She basically asked for joint custody of me. I'm not kidding. When I was an infant toddler, she seriously asked my parents if I could spend 2 to 3 days at her house weekly, and then every other weekend, spend the entire weekend sleeping over at her house as well. Also, she thought my mom breastfeeding me was hogging me. She didn't like the clothes my mother bought for me, so she would buy clothes herself, cut the tags off, wash them, and hide them in my closet in my house. She would also do this if she didn't like stuff my parents owned. She'd go out and buy stuff and just stick it in our kitchen drawers. When my mom started making an effort to get us out of the house more so she couldn't randomly stop by to visit so often, she started spying on the calendar we had in our house, and then would instead randomly stop by at events we'd be out at. When I was a bit older but still needed babysitting for the summer, she'd come over still in pajamas claiming she hadn't had time to get ready. So then I'd have to go spend the day at her house instead so she could get dressed. Luckily, this stopped when poor innocent me went, "Actually, Grandma, I'm allowed to stay home alone now, so you just go get dressed, and I'll wait here. I've been the artist of the family since I was a kid." She'd constantly ask me to draw her stuff, but then if she didn't like what I drew, she'd try to jokingly steal another drawing that I'd made for myself instead. This never went well, ha. When I was like 13 and she was over, she proceeded to say, "Baby cakes, come sit on my lap," while she was on the couch. Again, I was 13 and was way beyond the age of sitting on people's laps. She thinks my mother brainwashed me into hating her. But what actually happened was that kid me started noticing how weird she acted compared to my other grandma. When I asked my mother about it, my mother basically said, "Yeah, she's crazy," and I had no trouble believing her. Ongoing issues now, I can't tell her about anything I'm remotely interested in, 'cause she'll latch onto it and try to use it as some way to get me to spend more time with her. Most of you would probably think, why not just spend time with her? But after everything else on this list, I honestly just don't like being around her a lot. One of the reasons she got a phone was for the purpose of texting me in particular, and to this day, she is still pouty that it didn't work in getting me to talk to her more. Also, when I didn't reply to her weird texts, she'd call up my father and whine to him about how I never talked to her, and then he'd get mad at me over it. This also never went well. She is the reason why I hate all of the pet names baby, baby cakes, babes, my sweet sweetie, etc. Because to this day, me now being 18, she is the only person in my whole family who calls me these names, and it feels like I'm treated like a child. Her newest scheme is that she thinks if she can get me alone with her, my mother won't be able to brainwash me into hating her. And she has yet to realize somehow that it has nothing to do with my mother at all, and everything to do with how I myself don't actually want to be alone with her. There are more instances, but the list is legitimately so long. If anyone would like to hear more, I will happily share. So I got some more stories about this lady from my mom after posting part 1, my lovely entitled grandmother, and since they're quite bad, I thought I'd share them too. When I was a toddler, my parents would let me pick out my outfit for the day. Since I'm a toddler, why wouldn't they? And whenever this lady came over, she'd actually force me to change into an outfit she liked better, even if I told her I didn't want to. Again, Grandma is arguing with a 2-year-old here about clothes, which is just ridiculous. The worst of the stories. This lady also loved brushing my hair as a toddler apparently. When I was a kid, I had really curly hair, and for those who may not know, you should never brush out curly hair. This lady would brush my hair so much it'd hurt, and I'd ask her to stop. My mom started taking our brush to work with her so this lady couldn't get it, so then she bought her own to bring instead. Apparently, one day my mom came home to my grandma looking annoyed, and my grandma told her something along the lines of me having been bratty or something. My mom goes upstairs to find, again, 2-year-old me crying in my closet because I'd asked Grandma to stop brushing my hair and she wouldn't, so I ran and hid from her in my closet. This lady made a toddler cry just because she wanted to brush my hair. Yes, my mother had a lengthy talk with her after this one. Now to other things that have happened since the first post. I had my family graduation party on Sunday, and she and my grandpa got to the restaurant before the rest of us. There was an uneven number of us, so the table had an extra seat right at the end, so head of the table. She decided she would position herself and my grandpa right next to the head of the table chair, with the assumption that I would sit there and therefore sit right next to her all night. Like, yes lady, I definitely would rather sit next to you than, I don't know, my own parents, or perhaps my younger cousins that I sit with at every family outing. When I informed her that no way was I sitting at the head of the table, and would again much rather sit with my parents and cousins, she actually seemed offended. For this next story, I first need to explain how she does gift giving. Usually for holidays or birthdays, you'd get someone something they either directly asked for or something you just know would cater to their interests. No, this lady gets you something that she wants to give you, which 90% of the time means something that caters to her interests and style, and is something you yourself would probably never want in your life. In fact, when it was explained to her by my mother and the rest of the family that we usually get gifts the person actually asked for, she was offended and thought that made us entitled and bossy. Anyways, now the story. For my graduation, she got me this painting made by her friend with some inspirational quote on it, as well as a whale and a very stylized looking person. I hate to seem ungrateful, but I don't own anything ocean-themed whatsoever, and the colors of this painting are incredibly bold and kind of jarring, and don't go with anything I own in the slightest. And while there, she's literally saying, yeah, like, you know it matches your wall color, so you could just get a nail and put it up like right now. And the whole time I'm trying to awkwardly smile and deflect her suggestions. Also, I should clarify, the only things on my bedroom walls are my own drawings and a poster of a fat tiger. I don't even have the wall space for this thing. However, it looks exactly like the artwork in her own house. Other examples of her gift giving. My mother hates the color orange. This grandma loves the color orange. This grandma once bought my mother a bright orange, bead-covered hippie-looking jacket, and actually got offended when my mother kindly refused it. Since this grandma doesn't really know many of my interests because I can't tell her, she'll buy me random stuff. The problem is, if you spent 5 minutes in my room, it would be really obvious what I like by my 4 different crystal collections and rabbit stuffed animals. Now for some context, when I buy crystals, they're often smaller or only slightly larger than a $2 coin, so like 1 by 1 inch I guess, and often a shade of blue or purple. This lady bought me a massive pink crystal the size of my entire palm. I had to actually move things to make space for it on my shelf because I never buy crystals that big. Also, for Christmas one year, she bought me and both my parents these creepy nutcrackers. Again, we don't own anything nutcracker related, and again got offended when we didn't add them to our yearly Christmas decor. Also, since a lot of people were asking in the last post, I thought I'd clarify here for those who may not have seen my replies where my dad has been for all of this. Basically, he was her only kid, and since she's difficult to deal with, most of her side of the family doesn't actually like her. He's nice to her still because he feels obligated as her only kid, and again because she doesn't have many other people. That side of my family is her, my grandpa, and her 100-year-old mother, who is obviously not the best of company. Obviously, he wishes I had a better relationship with her, so he doesn't participate in my mom and me gossiping about her. We don't do it in front of him, but still. But he has also given up on trying to get me to like her, and has stopped going along with her demands of making me call her or talk to her more. I think he actually told her at one point something along the lines of this being her own bed that she made, so she shouldn't complain about laying in it. Hopefully, I won't make a part 3. Just for some context, I worked in retail at the same store for about 15 years. I was part of the management team when we had our highest-ranked manager leave to explore other opportunities. She was a young single mother, and the retail management life doesn't afford you as much family time as you might think. Myself and the rest of our team had to run the store on our own while we waited for her replacement to be trained in another store, which afforded the rest of us with even less family time. So by the time the new manager was able to start, me and the rest of our team were completely burned out, which was not helped much by the fact that our new team member was a real Karen-type personality. She wouldn't do the work but then would criticize our work for not being done the way she wanted done. As she was higher on the food chain, if she didn't like my work, I had to redo it. So 1 week into the new queen's reign of terror, I had had enough. I was done rebuilding the same displays 15 times in a shift. So I walked into the cash office where I knew she would be sitting down on the phone with her friend for the 5th time in the due hours she had been there. Handed in my resignation effective immediately, handed in my keys and walked out. I never felt that free in my life. Fast forward to this past holiday season, I am out doing some heavy Christmas shopping for the fam. I ran into a woman who I recognize as a regular customer who always came in when I was still working there. Also a Karen type. She was always that one customer that no one ever wanted to check out, so I often ended up being the one to check her out back in the day because I was really good at gritting my teeth behind a big smile, some sarcasm, and a can-do attitude. She walks up to me on this day and says, "I see you out of," some product that I didn't care to commit to memory, and asks if I will check the back. To which I reply, "I'm sorry, I don't work here." I'm clearly not in the company dress code, as I'm wearing a winter coat for starters, but also sweatpants, snow boots, and a winter hat. So I figure that will be the end. "Nope," she replied, "you do to work here. I know you're either just coming in or shopping on your day off or something, but it's your job to help the customers in this store. Now help me." I said, "Seriously, ma'am, I don't work here." To which she responds, "I know you do. You've checked me out before." I said, "Yes, I did work here, and I did check out before 10 years ago, and I haven't worked here since 10 years ago." As I'm walking away to move to another aisle, I hear her just whining about how horrible of an employee I am, and she is going to see to it that I'm fired. I brush it off and keep shopping. About the time I was starting to forget about the interaction completely, I turn a corner and see Karen, and let's call her Amy, my former subordinate, who is the new head manager and good friend of mine, heading straight towards me. Karen's hands are flailing, still complaining that Amy has a horrible employee, and she wants her fired now. Anything short of theft or threat of harm to employees and customers, the order to fire someone, has to come from the corporate office. Amy doesn't have that power. When Amy sees who Karen is complaining about, she couldn't hold back. She busts up laughing and says, "Ma'am, I can't fire her. She doesn't work here anymore, and even if she did, she would still be my boss." She then accuses Amy of lying to try and cover up her own ineptitude. She storms off, leaving a cart full of items behind. I took a few minutes to talk to Amy, and I even helped her put Karen's stuff back on the shelf when Amy was called to the office. Apparently one of their corporate bosses, who we will call Lisa, whom I also knew from my time working there, was in town for fourth quarter meetings with the staff and had seen Karen leaving in a huff in her way back from her lunch break, and stopped to see what was wrong and assured her she would get to the bottom of it. As I'm checking out, I can still hear Karen arguing with them that she knows I work here and she will have us all fired. They ended up having to pull out past employee files and show her my resignation letter dated 10 years earlier. She kept throwing a tantrum that this all fabricated, and at the end, they had to call security to escort her out and even banned her because she broke some things off the shelves. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences and opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.